Hello, and thanks everybody for joining us at Driven 2021. Welcome to today's episode featuring TTI. Before I hand things off to Pat O'Connell, I want to encourage you to use our chat feature to ask any questions that may arise during the interview with Chris from TTI. At the end of today's interview, Pat and Chris will be answering questions live in the chat. Also in the chat, I have placed a link to register for the live raffle of Beats AirPods today, which I'm using, and I think they're awesome. And it's important that you use your work email when registering in the raffle, as we must comply to corporate and government guidelines. With all that being said, I'm excited to kick things off with BP3's Pat O'Connell and TTI's Chris McCarley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Pat O'Connell, a senior automation architect over here at BP3, and I'm excited to introduce to you TTI's application manager, Chris McCarley. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with us and talk with me today. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have been working on over there.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Can you start by telling me a little bit about, or telling us a little bit about TTI?
Absolutely. So TTI is a sub-company of Berkshire Hathaway as of several years now. And we are one of the world's largest suppliers of electronic components. So we don't manufacture too much, but we sell 1 billion parts in sales offices around the US and in Europe and Asia.
Excellent. So now that we are emerging from the COVID-19 virtual era, is there anything in the past year that you might have not learned otherwise?
Well, I sure hope we're emerging. It seems like it's never ending. Yeah, so first I'll say that I believe a lot of people working from home, we're very productive. Most of our workforce is still working from home. But I also know that there was a certain sense of detachment in some cases, and I think we saw an impact on communication and alignment. So to help address that, so we have a lot of communication with Teams and Zooms, sometimes all day long, but sometimes there's a lot of that communication and not enough of the right communication, especially with business owners. So to address that, we try to emphasize having regular communication, even if you're in the middle of something, because it's human nature. When somebody doesn't hear something, they assume the worst, especially if, like, let's say we have a bot that's down or having issues. Regular communication, we emphasize that more in this situation. I also mentioned alignment, and people generally know what they're supposed to be doing, but it's still helpful to remind them, sometimes even on a daily basis, of what the priorities are and what you should be doing now and what they're going to do next. Because, and I'm not talking about micromanaging, because I want the team to make their own decisions and technical decisions, but really to reiterate, this is what we need to do right now. This is what's coming up. This is the plan. It just seems to help.
Excellent. Sounds like you guys learned a lot along the way and applied it to your day-to-day work life.
Yeah, it was definitely business changing.
Great. Okay, so this one we're going to hold you to from last year. So when you spoke at Driven last year, you mentioned that your team was building momentum in the RPA implementation space, and it was opening up the possibilities for a lot of new bot cases in the enterprise. 1 year later, how are things looking over there?
Yeah, so the pandemic did impact our momentum somewhat, but we still have a lot of RPA cases to do. And I considered that maybe at some point it would kind of plateau and we'd run out of the good cases and low-hanging fruit. We really haven't seen that yet. I mean, sometimes we're having trouble keeping up. It's not like we have a huge onslaught of cases, but we've got a steady stream. We also are seeing opportunities outside of traditional RPA, which it's part of the automation journey. And we're looking at cases to be able to integrate with other systems, and also talking about, we're big on APIs now, maybe getting late to the party, but a lot of APIs in the company. And so having bots interface with those. And finally, also talking about workflows that include bots as part of it. So people are kind of getting what bots can do now, or maybe what they shouldn't do. And so there's a lot of talk that's common to say, okay, we'll do this, someone will do this, and then we'll have a bot do this thing there. So I think that's encouraging that the organization, gets how this can matter, how bots can be used.
Great, great. That's a great transition into my next question too, because we at BP3 think that TTI is a great example of how a company can find efficiency through automation. So can you provide us maybe a specific scenario of how you guys at TTI find efficiency through automation?
We get the benefits or payback of automation in a few ways. In the past, I talked about actually having some direct financial recoveries. In general, as with RPA, in a lot of places, we're saving people from doing those tedious, time-consuming things to let them focus on something that they could do better. But then there's also, I think, an important factor of agility and cycle time reduction, so that people can turn around what they're doing and get this information at their fingertips more quickly. So I think that's kind of the biggest win, honestly.
That's great. That's great. So kind of shifting gears a little bit here, but in the same realm, training teams on how to utilize new bots is very important to BP3 and in general for implementation of bots. When your team creates new bots, how do you ensure that the new bot is being utilized the way it was intended to?
Good question. Our business owners are very engaged in the process, both in speccing it out initially and helping to do the UAT testing. And a lot of our cases are generating reports that are going to be consumed by somebody shortly thereafter. So we have a lot of people who can give us feedback if it's not doing what it should. And we're running our bots, most of them are run unsupervised. So there's not like somebody's off running it in a bad way. But having said that, though, it's a good question in terms of another factor, and that's that we are now starting to look at what I'll call federated development. We looked at citizen development, and that didn't really take on for us, and that's okay. It just wasn't necessary. But we are having other developers in other departments that are going to be developing bots. We have a couple now. We're talking with getting some people in our European division able to develop their own bots. So that's going to make the answer to that question a lot more, I guess, complex and interesting, as we have to do the, put the guardrails around what they're doing and make sure that bots are running smoothly and properly.
Great, great. So a lot of unattended bots that you guys have live in production. That's great.
Yeah, mostly unattended.
Yeah, the best you can do, the more you can do that, the better. Next question. So Driven, as you know, as a whole, is all about automation. And what automation have you guys found to be the most helpful for your business?
We, as I think I mentioned, we generate a lot of reports because we don't manufacture much. We're very supply chain and sales driven. Having the information available is important. So we have tons of reports that get generated, not all with bots, but some pretty critical ones now. So I think, as I mentioned before, the cycle time, I think if you can get this information in the hands of somebody, even a couple hours earlier, or have it be available there when they sign on in the morning, it can be a huge competitive advantage and give them agility when trying to get the sales and wins with customers. So I think that's the most important thing. And we have, for example, a report that does invoice exceptions, and invoice exceptions are ironically the rule rather than the exception. And the quicker they can turn, and there's several people that were doing that manually every day for hours, what the bot is now replacing. So taking care of that process, getting the information available for them, first thing in the morning has been a big thing. And they've grown very critical on that bot. And we know that because they let us know every time it's a little bit late. So that's a good thing.
Great. So you guys are pretty far along on your automation journey utilizing RPA, but a lot of our viewers are just beginning, or even for some of those that are, far along the way. Would you have any suggestions for how you guys got started off? Maybe some speed bumps or things to avoid?
Sure, because one of the biggest things we've seen, and we call it, the care and feeding of bots, is keeping those things running in production, because a variety of things can impact them that may have nothing to do with the bot itself. It could be patches on the Windows system, something in the network, constantly changing software versions and so forth. So I would strongly recommend everybody code in from the start robustness and some fault tolerance. And I'll give BP3 a shout out for that, because they taught us that at the very beginning, to put some of these things in place so you're getting logging, you're trapping errors. And we even do things like we'll put in a retry. So let's say a bot is doing something with a browser and the browser click doesn't go right because the browser's updated or something in the Windows system. We'll put retries in to try that again and basically increase the reliability of it. So you don't have that bot fail or back up other bots or whatever. So that's really the most important thing I would say that we learned. And so another thing I would say as well is keep it fun. I think the team works best when they're coming up with clever bot names, and they're making, there's like 1,000 bot jokes you can make, right, about crazy use cases or bot terminology. So I think it's important. I think it's something we've lost a little bit, but I'm hoping we get back.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for sitting down with me, Chris, and sharing all the great information. It was really intriguing.
My pleasure.
Viewers, please stay tuned as we transition into the Q&A portion, and be on the lookout for that link in the chat box to enter our Beats noise canceling earphone raffle. Remember, you must register with your work email to be included in the raffle. Thanks again.
Thanks, Chris, for doing that. And then Pat for, of course, asking our questions. So Pat, I'm going to pass this over to you to actually do these questions that are coming into the chat right now. So if you'll go ahead and start. And Chris, you can come on video now if you'd like.
Yes, yeah. It's always fun to watch.
That'd be great.
Yeah. It's always fun to watch yourself on a pre-recorded video, but yeah, I'll help curate the questions that are coming through on our YouTube live feed here. So one of the first questions was, has automation helped with COVID remote workers?
I think it has. I mean, I think it was very helpful before COVID, and it continues to do pretty much the same, maybe a bit more, because, and I'm repeating myself, but having that information available, the communication between organizations is important, and more important when you're all kind of distributed.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then, okay, this is a good one. How do you vet your new RPA projects? And I would assume that the person that asked this also is imagining, like, how do you kind of stack rank which ones you guys are going to attack first and so forth?
Yeah, so please do vet them. We've gotten in trouble a couple times when it came from somebody, a little more important, let's say. We said, oh, sure, we'll do that. And it turned out to be, complicated and not worth it, or taking too long. We do Agile Scrum, and we have involvement from actually multiple product owners in a few of the key different departments. So they help us vet these things from a business perspective. And they kind of get the technical complexity too, right? So between our developers and the business owners, we can help decide, the complexity versus is it worth it? And sometimes even they can help suggest alternatives. So I think that, normally in Scrum, it's like, one product owner, we decided to go a little different way and get involvement from other business people more regularly than you might in a regular Agile Scrum team.
That's great advice. The next question actually is related to some of the advice you offered around how advice about getting started. And the question was, what practices have you found that help your team the most? And you mentioned logs. Are there is there other pieces of advice there?
Yeah, and I will reiterate the logs, because it seems like you can't have too much logging. I suppose you could, but we haven't seen it yet. So for every execution that any of our bots do, there is a separate timestamp folder, and associated with that is a log. And this was taught to us by BP3. So there is a log for every run. And so we put pertinent things in there because when something goes wrong, you need to go figure that out. And that is by far the best way, especially when you're running unattended, because it's running over there on a runner somewhere, and you can't see that. So that is extremely helpful, even in cases, not just the errors. Log what it's doing every step of the way. Okay, I completed this, and then where it might have gone wrong. So the logging is really important. And I mentioned other things you can do, like doing retries. And I think I said this before. So we have things that maybe click in a browser, or maybe they're trying to connect to another system. Check to see if that happened, and you usually can, right? Or if you're like saving a file, have some logging or do a check to see if that file actually got where you thought it did. And in many cases, you can put a retry loop around that. Okay, let me try like 3 times before I give up and say, the bot can't work. It's a bigger problem. But sometimes it's just, okay, somehow the timing in Windows, it didn't catch that file, or a browser click, which is pretty reliable. Maybe something happened, it didn't go quite right that time. Well, we'll try it again a couple of times, and that can usually get you by.
Yeah, I would agree with you too. But the more logging, the better, because assuming you don't catch the error, you can find the last thing that you did successfully, and then hopefully it isn't too far down the code that you can see where it failed. So that's a very strong point. Another question coming in here about your automation backlog. How do you avoid your backlog from becoming too overwhelming?
So too overwhelming is the key. Occasionally is a bit overwhelming. It's just like anything else. You have to prioritize what your cases are, and if you have the communication with your product owners, and we share that across product owners too, so they understand, and they're very cooperative and sensitive to, hey, this organization really needs a spot right now. Mine can wait a little bit. But we're able to, on any given sprint, do some kind of bot for a few of the main different organizations. So I don't feel like we're behind that much. So how do what's the magic behind that? I think that coding in a modular way, just like with any other software, coding in a modular way can help that, because you can create a new bot either by cloning an old one, or because, okay, I've got this thing, it's just another version of that. Like, let's say we have a mainframe and we connect to that. So we have some metabots or some reusable tasks that we can legitimately reuse. We're doing a new bot. So we've got great examples and templates to fall off on, and we have tasks that we can reuse. So that helps keeping the throughput, which then of course keeps your backlog from getting too crazy.
Awesome. That's great advice. So I got a question here around, have you leveraged any of the IQbot, Discovery Bot, or the new offering Ari from Automation Anywhere yet?
We have not yet, and that is definitely a key thing. So we're in the process of migrating. We're still in on-prem 11, because once you get into something, you have to be able to schedule it appropriately. So we're going to be doing the migration to 360, and that is going to be a key part of it, because I would like to get information myself and the team, but I want to know if something's going badly before my users find out. And sometimes we don't get that, and I'd rather we know that something's going bad or it's taking too long. And we've done some of our own internal sort of checks and monitors, but we could always use more. And that's just part of it, right? I mean, IQ can give you all kinds of other information that would be useful in refining our bots. We're not leveraging yet, so I think it will be great.
Okay, cool. And then the next question is around ROI, return on investment, and the question is, what challenges have you guys faced in terms of measuring your ROI?
So what we do is, for every bot, we are estimating, and when we do the vetting up front, we'll always ask, how much time is this saving per person, per day, or week, or whatever it is? And then we estimate how much each bot run is saving. It's not an exact science, but it's pretty good first pass. And so every time a bot runs, we update a custom statistic table that says, okay, I saved an hour, and so it increments that running count by an hour, right? So then we actually have a report that we produce weekly that shows, okay, this is the running count of what the bot is saving, and even by lifetime. So we do have some kind of ROI, and we can relate that to dollars because we talk to our finance guy and say, okay, what is the average savings per employee? And so we got that number from them. We use these counters, and that gives us a kind of running ROI. Because I mean, I'm responsible for several applications, and that is the only one where anybody asks that question. I mean, it's a question you could ask for any software, but bots are different animals. So that question is there where I don't find it in other applications.
Right. And then one thing I would add there too is the time that you're saving a resource, they get to use that time to add more value doing something else too. So there's a lot of areas to measure ROI, with RPA. That was great advice. This next question is around different time zones. So with your RPA, have you used it to manage operations outside the US, like different time zones, languages, currencies, and so forth?
Yes, we have. The currency type stuff is generally handled by the information in our core systems, but we are running 24/7. We have operations in Europe and Asia, and we do run the same kind of reports that we run in the US get generated for Europe or Asia. And we also have a couple of specific things that we do for Europe that really weren't important in the US, but based on their business processes and their types of customers and business, it was useful for them. So there is a challenge there trying to coordinate all those things. So spreading the scheduling across our runners, because usually you want to run that stuff off hours for that business and also not have a bunch of bots conflict, running at the same time. So a little bit of a challenge there, but we seem to be able to make it work.
That's great. So in terms of monitoring, what other, you have logging, but I guess, what other types of monitoring do you have in place and so forth? Are we monitoring logs? Do you have people monitoring daily?
We do have some monitoring external to the bot control room to tell us. It's a challenge because, I mean, you want that, right? So we're monitoring the system. So we have monitoring at the virtual machine level for the runners. We have some monitoring on logs and monitoring through the API of bot execution. One of the challenges, though, is knowing what I want to know is if something is late. It may not have an issue, but there are several cases where I want to know that something is late. And so we experimented with that a little bit to kind of characterize, okay, this bot runs at 8 o'clock in the morning, say, and it's normally done within 2 hours. Let me know if that's not happening, right? Because it could be either running, it's slow, or it's stalled, and having that information would be helpful. And so we're still experimenting with that a bit, but we're doing a little bit of those kind of things.
Great. Next question. I don't know if it was meant to be a pun, but it sounds like one. So given hindsight is 2020 or in 2020, what advice do you wish you had received when you started your RPA program?
So we got some good advice and some help. I mean, that was one of the best things we did was to, it's another plug, but it was so true. Bringing VP3 in at the beginning to help us do some best practices, because we would have taken longer. We got our first bots launched from 0 to within a couple months, we were putting some stuff into prod. And that's pretty amazing. That just doesn't usually happen in our environment, or probably in any reasonably established environment. So by not only leveraging their first manpower, so that I was free to deal with a whole bunch of other things like security, and there were many. I was able to focus on that while they were helping us with implementation, getting stuff installed and set up. And then, of course, they taught us best practices. So is there anything we're missing? Maybe we should have leveraged IQbots more in the beginning, but we didn't know.
Great answer. The next question, there was a question around, in your opinion, does RPA suit every industry?
So it's a good question. I don't know every industry, but I've yet to see one that probably doesn't have all the same kinds of processes that we're dealing with here. I mean, any other organization I've either been in or talked to in this in relation to RPA or whatever, they have these kinds of processes, because you've got your core thing and you've got some core systems, but you have a whole lot of these administrative things that people do to make the business run, to deal with finances, in our case, deal with supply chain and things like that. And traditionally you would say, well, I'll just like code some solutions, but we all know that those things take a long time. I mean, that's one of the criticisms of IT is, well, I want this thing and it always takes like 6 months to get it. Whereas you can use RPA and say, okay, don't reinvent that, take what they're doing and make it happen. And we are seeing that there are things that we would never get around to with traditional coding, or even, let's call it traditional automation, like programmatically doing it. We would never get around to that. And that'll change over time. Everybody talks about the transformation and the automation journey. And so we'll see that shift, but I can't see like RPA not being useful to us for quite some time, or to most organizations in some way.
I agree. Across industries, there's onboarding, there's accounts receivable, lots of revenue, and these types of operations are very translatable. I would agree. The next question is around cloud. How critical is moving to the cloud for your ops?
It's important. I know the cloud is a solution for everything, but it also works and it solves a lot of problems. So, for example, we just went through a migration, and that was supposed to be a small migration, and it just takes a lot of work. And so going to the cloud, we'll have a hybrid solution because of our architecture. So we'll have runners on-prem, but just putting control rooms and even the creators in the cloud will be a big thing for us. And we are getting into the cloud with some other applications. There's a pretty huge one that we're working on currently, getting into prod. And you have to manage the things, right? I mean, there's a return on investment, there are costs associated with it, but you can see the benefits in terms of keeping the infrastructure up to date, because you don't much worry about that. And also all the cloud tools that you can get to monitor the operation and to recover from problems. So, and we're having some problems with the growing pains with this new one. And so I could see definitely having the same benefits. We haven't had the same kind of challenges as with that kind of new application, but it could only help. I mean, the amount of control you have, and I'll use the word agility again there, and insights into what's going on. I mean, all the cloud platforms give you so much stuff you don't know where to look sometimes. So, but that's a good thing.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Pat, for asking all of those insightful questions. And thank you for joining us for episode 1 of Driven 2021. Through our random selection raffle, Missy Bexton has won the Beats earpods for this week. Missy will be reaching out to you shortly. Congratulations. Our next episode of Driven 2021 will be on Tuesday, September 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Our featured guest will be Tavis Addison of Volkswagen Credit, talking about how they became more customer-centric with automation. It's a discussion you don't want to miss. If you've not registered for Driven, we're shipping out conference t-shirts direct to your door with registration. Registration will send you a reminder on how to join our live stream as well. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Thank you again, Chris, and thank you